Mirasee.
It's okay if you don't have the next right word or you stumble over something. You just keep going. And I'll just add in that an introvert would tend to ask for forgiveness or, oh gosh, I can't remember, please forgive me. And I think a piece of this is you just keep going, even if it's not perfect. I like to say progress, not perfection.
Hi, I'm Dr. Irena O'Brien, and you're listening to Neuroscience of Coaching. I'm a cognitive neuroscientist with almost 30 years of study and practice in psychology and neuroscience. And as the founder of the Neuroscience School, I teach coaches and other wellness professionals real-world, evidence-based strategies to use in their own practices. In each episode, I invite a seasoned coach to discuss a topic that affects our field, and together, we provide you with science-based tools to help your clients reach their goals by working with their brains to create results that last. A prominent topic of personality in coaching and business is introversion and extroversion. Although introduced by the famous psychologist Carl Jung a century ago, these personality dimensions are still often debated. Meanwhile, social neuroscience continues to discover more about introverts and extroverts and what makes them tick. For today, our focus is introversion. While I may explore extroversion in a future episode, I wanted to start with introversion because it tends to be more misunderstood. In addition, studies have shown that our society as a whole tends to exhibit a bias in favor of extroverted people, which conversely disfavors introverts. For example, much of Western culture has come to idolize and favor extroversion as we see it in online influencers, YouTube personalities, reality show contestants, and more. While these people certainly include introverts, what we, the public and fans, see and favor are their extroverted traits and behaviors. And naturally, social conformity leads to rewarding and emulating extroversion, which in turn devalues and marginalizes introversion and its traits. And likewise, workplace dynamics have been shown again and again to reward extroversion without a control for this bias in place. So what does neuroscience say about introversion? First, we've come to learn that there is a physiological difference in the brain. Most prominently, introversion correlates with a thicker prefrontal cortex, which is the area associated with decision-making and deep thought. The result is that people toward the introverted end of the scale prefer more time to deliberate decisions and more time in deep thought. Second is the dopamine difference. While the amount of this pleasure-inducing chemical is the same in the brains of introverts and extroverts, extroverts have a more active dopamine network. As they get ready for a social event, for example, this kicks into gear and generates excitement and anticipation. Meanwhile, the introvert will be more likely to feel less enthusiasm or even anxiety about the impending social occasion. Third is another pleasure-related chemical, acetylcholine. Unlike dopamine, this one makes a person feel good in calm, quiet, introspective situations. Introverts' brains have more receptors for acetylcholine, so they naturally enjoy these settings more than extroverts. Last, it's been shown that social stimuli are literally processed differently in the brains of extroverts. In short, it generates greater behavioral motivation, and I'll talk more about this in a little bit. So with that neuroscience as the basis, how can we as a society value introversion more, recognize its benefits, and understand introverts better? Let's bring my guest on and dive into this great topic. With 200 plus speaking engagements each year, master publicity strategist and consultant and best-selling author Jill Lublin consistently wows audiences worldwide with her entertaining and interactive keynotes, seminars, and training programs on publicity, networking, kindness, and influence marketing. Jill has shared her powerful networking and publicity strategies on major event stages with the likes of Tony Robbins, Jack Canfield, Lisa Nichols, and many others. Additionally, thousands of people have attended her popular publicity crash course. Over the past 25 years, Jill has worked with top national and international media as a highly regarded publicity expert. She has also been featured in the New York Times and magazines such as Women's Day, Entrepreneur, Forbes, and Inc. So Jill, welcome to the show and thank you for sharing part of your day with me.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you and your listeners.
So tell us a little more about your journey and how that made you particularly interested to talk about our topic today.
I have been in the world of publicity and helping literally, thousands of entrepreneurs, business owners. And what I know is that just like you said in your intro, there are introverts, there are extroverts. People are more or less comfortable on promoting themselves. And I thought it would be really fun and engaging to talk about this with regard to that.
Okay. So a simple distinction that's often said about introverts and extroverts is that introverts recharge their batteries through time to themselves, while extroverts recharge their batteries through time with other people. What would you add to that for deeper understanding?
Well, it's interesting because one would say I'm an extrovert, but funny enough, if I don't get my private, quiet time to recharge, I might add. So I might be both, even though most people would probably assume I'm an extrovert based on what I do and how I help people and what I noticed for me. And I think this is true for most humans, is that we do need recharge time. And I think that quiet, solitary, peaceful time is actually important probably to recharge anyone, which is what meditation is based on, etc. So personally, I think it's good for all humans to recharge quietly.
I would call myself an extreme introvert. So as an extreme introvert, I completely agree. I had family staying over with me for the last couple of weekends, and I love them dearly. I hadn't seen them in a couple of years, but we were in bed by 9:00 because everybody was exhausted from the day. And it's not like we ran around all day. It's just that there was no alone time.
Yeah, exactly. I know when I have guests, I say I need to leave about 8. Actually, I do it 1 hour early just because, same thing. It's not like I'm even going to sleep. I just want some of my own time. I think it's really important, because especially in our Western world, we're out, and that is valued. And yet I find poor balance, and it's also good to come in.
Exactly. So as a publicity coach and expert, what do you see being the hardest thing about getting introverts to embrace publicity and self-promotion? And how do you get around that?
Yeah, it is an interesting piece because I think the piece of helping an introvert to really come out is to get a message that's powerful for them, to be resonant for who you are, that you can speak it. Because the thing that I always call it preaching about your message is that you have to be able to say it anywhere, anytime, especially in media. And frankly, some interviews are really early and some morning shows, you might have to be on at 5, 6 in the morning. Really, no kidding. And sometimes even in the studio, that means full makeup or even on Zoom, and just looking good and being bright and ready. And so what I suggest to people is having a powerful message that is a script. Yes, it's a script, and you will have it, know it, feel it, and be able to recite it anywhere, anytime. For instance, I had a woman, she's in real estate. Beautiful woman, highly articulate, very successful. And here's what's interesting. She would never come on camera. She was incredibly scared to speak. And again, she's in real estate. She's dealing with people already. And isn't that an interesting dichotomy, right? And by the time we finished and I, shall we say, helped her get more courageous. And part of that really is just about having something that just feels good to say. You sound good with it. It feels central to who you are. What I've noticed is that people then rise up. And the reality is, if you're in business, if you're speaking to anyone, even a virtual assistant I was talking to the other day, she's a high-tech person, and she says, I don't really love going out and meeting people, networking, but I really know how important it is and how important it is to be able to speak what I do, who I am, what I represent, how I can help others. And for that, we helped her develop a script, all right, and supported her with a message. So to me, it's really helpful to come down to a message that you can recreate and connect to consistently to communicate well.
Thank you for that. So what comes up for me is, how do you help people reach out to people that they don't know? Personally, I find that particularly hard.
The thing is, if you're clear and confident about who you are and what you offer, I just would look at it as offering your gift. And to me, we all have gifts, right? Even those who are incredibly shy, internalized, you have a gift to give others and to help others with. And to be able to communicate that is actually really important. I mean, unless you just want to retire on a mountain somewhere, the point is, and by the way, I've tried that. And even then, I still had to reach out and talk and connect to people. So I think it's really about considering what you have as a gift and reframing it a little in your mind of the opportunity to help others, the opportunity to have impact and influence. That's what media does. That's what speaking yourself well does. And, you don't have to be perfect, but I do think that having I'll call it concise and precise message is actually key. And here's the good news. When you have that, it actually makes the reach out, frankly, easier. It really does. It takes the pressure off, and to understand that people everywhere with their own insecurities and excellence and genius and failings and everything we all have, right? And when I started speaking professionally and would get in front of an audience, I'm like, oh my God. And I remember somebody saying, oh, just picture them all in their underwear. I just thought that was so funny. But that is the point, that we, in a certain way, we're really all the same. And I think to realize that people aren't overly judging you. Like, it's not about perfection. I do think this stops a lot of people, that sort of perfection thing.
Wow, Jill, there was a lot in there, and a lot of things that I teach my students too. And yet they're also the things that I suffer from, right? Which is the perfectionism, that everything has to be right, just the right words. But yeah, I have a gift. Everyone has a gift, and we want to share that gift.
Listen, here's the reality. And the good news is that there's a script, meaning you know what to say. And I have walked into interviews with a card, meaning a index card with my message written on it. So I remember. Same thing for any of you. You can have reminders on your computer and what to say and in what order, paste it and post it somewhere. I think that's fine. And then you grow into it. It gets easier with it.
Yeah, that's a great tip, to have things on cards and Post-it notes and to have script, right? And there's nothing wrong with having a script. And the fact is that most other people have some nervousness about it also, right? Nobody goes into these social situations totally, or very few people go in totally confident. And there's always a little bit of anxiety, but we tend to think that we're the only ones.
That's right. That's right. And to understand that one of the ways to offset that anxiety is through scripting. It's interesting if you think about it, all right? When you're watching, let's say, any news show, they have scripts, they work off of things. When I've been in every news station, they have a teleprompter that the host is reading. And so I just think that that's good for people to know, is that scripts are good, they're okay.
So, as I said in my opening, the brain difference in processing dopamine makes introverts less enthusiastic about social occasions and sometimes overly anxious about them. But social events are also part of life. So how can introverts better handle this conflict without simply avoiding socializing? You did mention scripting is a good way.
Yes, I certainly did. And I actually think even for social situations, because let's be honest, everyone's going to say to you, what do? You got to have an answer. Right? So what do I do? And come up with an answer. I help people get publicity and create visibility. I help people script a message that works for what to say when people ask you, what do you do? And the other thing I find helpful is get in front of a mirror and just check yourself, meaning your posture. And it's a simple thing, but remembering to smile. And so even in social situations, I think you center yourself in your car before you get in there, do whatever you need to do that. Take some deep breaths and walk in, with confidence as much as possible. But I do find posture helps, standing up straight and a smile on your face. That alone is just going to melt people and makes you already approachable. And I know this is a funny thing, but the next thing is get around the food. Because when people are around food, there's a natural relaxation and people are eating and it's kind of like a family thing. People tend to talk more and it's not quite as, stifled.
Those are great tips, Jill. Thank you for that. The thing with introversion is that As much as we would like to just stay in our own bubble, that's not possible, right? I mean, we can, but then our life would shrink, right? And so in order to create a kind of life and business that we want, we do have to engage, or we do have to go out into these social situations. So I'm going to remember a few of those tips.
Good. I think it'll be helpful. And, I think most people should honestly practice in front of the mirror just to see. And I know for me, the other thing I do sometimes was listen to interviews and things. I noticed that I was doing a lot of ums and ahs. And what it really is a place for me to stop and reflect and think about the next piece. And I started taking them out of my language where I could. Occasionally it might fall back in. And again, I've just given myself, and I think we each have to give ourselves some grace around it's okay if you don't have the next right word or you stumble over something. You just keep going. And I'll just add in that an introvert would tend to ask for forgiveness or, oh gosh, I can't remember, please forgive me. And I think a piece of this is you just keep going. Even if it's not perfect. I like to say progress, not perfection.
Yeah. Interestingly, my dissertation was on second language learning. And one of the things we looked at was disfluencies. So disfluencies are things like ums and ahs. And because we think in phrases, the purpose of ums and ahs is to think about the next phrase that you're going to say. I guess ideally you'd want to take them out.
Well, ideally, because it helps your language flow better. And I look at things from a media perspective. If I'm being interviewed, you're being interviewed, it is better not to hum and ha. But I think it's really interesting what you say around it's also an opportunity to come up with the next piece. And I would agree with that. Yeah, it's a yes and, right? It's a yes and. That what we're still looking at is, what would I call it, a consistency in your language, but also the opportunity to get your points across and just pause for a moment. And that's what I've learned to do. Pause, take a breath. I think the and ah part makes you sound a little less intelligent, kind of like you're grasping for what it is you're going to say, which is probably what really happens, right? We are trying to figure out what we're going to say next, because if you don't have a script or you're in the middle of an interview like we are, right, not everything's scripted. I just learned instead of and ah, I'll just pause for a minute and reflect.
Yeah, so it can be learned. However, it's unfortunate that people who speak that way are not valued in our society. It seems that everyone needs to be a TED Talk.
Yes, and those TED Talks are 18 minutes, right? I think more and more people don't have a lot of time and patience to listen through things. And that, yes, you have to be precise and concise with your language and frankly, not take a long time to get to the point. And this is today's world. And I think an actual real key to success is to have that language down, to be focused on what you're going to say, to be listening, of course, but also know what your message is so that you can quickly get to the point. And people's listening, whether they admit it or not, is based in a culture that delivers in 5 minutes or less. Most of my media interviews, for instance, when I was interviewed for The Profit of Kindness on Fox News 7 times in different markets across the world, the average interview was 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Okay, that's really fast. And you got to get to the point and be focused. And you know what? In communication, in the world, it's the same thing. Maybe not in 4 minutes, but quick.
So do you have a personal success story, a client success story that supports and values introversion as it relates to business?
Well, here's an interesting one. I worked with a gentleman named Ryan. Ryan is more a technical person. He's an instructional designer. He takes people's courses and makes them online and easily more understood. Now, I have to tell you, I didn't even know what an instructional designer was when I met Ryan. He said, Jill, I'm starting my business. He had a pregnant wife with their third kid on the way. He just bought a big house in Northern California, and then he lost his job. And it's like, okay, he knew he had to get up and running fast. And so I said, Ryan, no offense, but what you told me about instructional design is boring, And for him, by the way, it was fascinating, but from a reality of explaining it to other people, it wouldn't fly. So I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to recreate your message. And I made Ryan into what I call a virtual office warrior. And the acronym for that is VOW. Ryan took a vow never to work in an office again. Well, here's what's interesting. That story is what got him into the front page of the San Francisco Business Times. Like front page, woohoo, They actually used the headline, Entrepreneur Vows Never to Work in an Office Again. Isn't that interesting? He actually had 8 people working for him virtually, like right out the gate, and all of the publicity. He got featured in Entrepreneur magazine. He got featured in Home Office Computing, which is a national magazine. And why? Because he's a home-based office person. He got featured in Mac Home Journal, and we laughed because, Ryan doesn't even have a Mac. You see where we're going with this? So what was wonderful is that Ryan was able to quickly and connectedly reach people with a story that was a human story. And actually, we rode that wave for like 9 months of instructional design and becoming a virtual office warrior. And here's how you can do it too. And it actually drove all kinds of businesses to his business and created a thriving instructional design business.
So how did he overcome his introversion?
Well, part of it was we had a script for him to follow. We had main points for him to speak about. And that's it. Really, it was that simple. I gave him the story for what to say in what order. And when you have that, what to say in what order, it eliminates, let's say it alleviates. I don't know if it eliminates, but often it does, but it certainly alleviates a lot of the pain associated with trying to figure things out, which introverts particularly get in their head. And it's like, okay, what am I going to say? What's next? I don't know. And when you have a script, the good news is you don't have to figure it out. And it's actually done for you. This was done with him, but now it's done for him speaking. And then on top of that, opportunities were presented to him. And then he knew what to say, how to handle it, and why it was interesting. Does that make sense?
So it's all about creating a script, right? That reduces the anxiety and it enables introverts to shine, really, like Ryan did.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So if anyone listening feels their introversion is too strong and perhaps is holding them back, what's one piece of advice you can offer?
So I would say it's about practice and also cutting words, because too many words, frankly, interfere with your ability to express simply. One of the things I know, having worked in media for close to 30 years, is that expressions and simple ways to communicate is actually far more effective, not only in media interviews, but also actually in life, and especially in today's times. I think, less is more in today's times. That means we don't need to know everything no offense, but we just want the most important pieces, the value and benefit that you give to others and that frankly people feel in your presence. Does that make sense? Like, just keep it simple. It really is about keeping it even simpler now and keep things easy. That's going to help a lot.
Yeah. So even though I teach neuroscience and I do get into the research studies and I explain them to my students, my goal is to make it practical. So in other words, to simplify it, right? And to make it practical. And I can understand the value in that.
Yes, exactly. And what a wonderful thing, right?
Yeah, because there's just so much in neuroscience that can be practical. And people don't understand that it can be, that they can learn things that can change their lives.
Yes. Yes, I love that.
So finally, is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners?
Well, I just want to say that I totally get it. And part of this is a practice. And that each time, here's the good news, you will get better. You will get more engaged with your own message and excited about what you're doing, and frankly, have the opportunity to connect to others. And find that, it's a human connection, right? That's what really life's about. And you'll do the best you can in each moment. But please understand, everyone out there is dealing with all their own stuff too. And so just come forth with your best self, your best message in each moment, how you can. And to know that that's perfect. That's just perfect. The point is, keep in the practice.
So what a perfect closing for our conversation today, Jill. So thanks for sharing that. And what's the best way for listeners to learn more about you and what you do?
Thank you. Well, definitely check out my website, jilllublin.com. And I have a free gift for everyone, which is more great publicity tips and a free publicity masterclass, interactive and with me. And I can help you on some of this message. And I'm live with you and can answer some questions. So you can get that at jilllublin.com/free gift.
I'm definitely going to take a look at that, Jill. So thank you again for your time with me today. This was such an enlightening conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
So thank you everyone for listening. In the 18th and 19th centuries, introversion was highly regarded by scientists, philosophers, theologians, writers, politicians, and society in general. But starting in the 20th century through today, this largely flipped to the prominence of extroversion we see all around us. 24/7 social media, online self-promotion, open office workplaces, constant meetings, and group projects all conspire to drown out the thoughts and ideas of introverts. At worst, it's easy to feel invisible, especially when you see the ideas, careers, or aspirations of extroverts around you gaining attention and traction. But if you're an introvert, hold steady to who you are. We function best, both individually and as a society, when we embrace and develop the positive aspects of our personalities. And introverts offer 4 main distinct advantages: deep and deliberate thought instead of quick-fire ideas, the ability to focus for longer periods of time, which tends to support greater problem solving, a greater likelihood of above-average intelligence or talent in a specific area of ability, and a lower tendency to go along with the crowd in negative ways. So wherever you are on the introversion-extroversion scale, I hope you've learned something helpful today. And remember, it's not a battle between introverts and extroverts. Rather, it's that we all win when we recognize and respect the gifts we each bring to the table. I'm Dr. Irena O'Brien, and you've been listening to Neuroscience of Coaching. You can find out more about me at neuroscienceschool.com. Neuroscience of Coaching is a part of the Mirasee FM podcast network, which also includes such shows as Just Between Coaches and To Lead is Human. This episode was produced by Andrew Chapman. Danny Inney is our executive producer, and Marvin Del Rosario is our audio editor. To make sure you don't miss great episodes coming up on Neuroscience of Coaching, please follow us on Mirasee FM's YouTube channel or your favorite podcast player. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a comment or a starred review. It's the best way to help us get these ideas out there to more people. Thanks, and we hope you'll join us next time.